Industrializing broadcast quality for OTT. So what does that mean, broadcast quality? It actually comes in lots of different flavors. It's not just the video quality itself, but it's actually how can you scale the latency. There's a lot of different things that actually entails. So is all content or all devices created equal? I think we would all say no. I mean, I think there's a lot of content that's out there. A lot of broadcasters have things out there that if things are delayed latency-wise, probably not a big deal. You're watching something that's multiple years old. No one really cares that's delivered at a later point in time. But you get some of that high-value content. You get some of the sports content that's really exciting. Everyone wants to see what's going on. That has a huge piece. There's scaling pieces. So we'll go ahead and hit on a couple of these real quick. So if you look at kind of where we are on the broadcast space, if you take a look at a game today and you're sitting at home, you're watching a show, you're probably somewhere in that 10-second range. By the time you actually get the contribution, distribution, by the time it actually gets back to all the affiliates, you get everything delivered out all the way to the cable companies to get that out there. You're about 10 seconds. 10 seconds, not too bad. It's a little farther away. About 10 seconds. So if you think about it, if you're sitting at the game, somebody is out and they're posting something on social media, 10 seconds, it takes about that long to actually get something posted. So you don't really have somebody where they're missing out on something. But if you start working on delivering OTT, I think about 2 years ago, probably somebody standing up here doing something similar to what I'm doing, and you would have been over a minute. So if you're at a minute and something happens, there's a big touchdown in a game, everyone's knowing before they're actually finding the results as they're watching that streaming content. So I think that's a huge problem. I think today we're down in that about 30, 40 second range. So we're getting closer, but you still have a big challenge because 30, 40 seconds, you get a lot of things, social media, that still would have an issue. So actually, interesting, I was talking to my 13-year-old son about this. He's like, Dad, what are you going to talk about? Oh, I'm talking about broadcast quality and latency. And he's like, latency? Come on, Dad, does this really matter? And he goes, well, just don't have anyone use social media at games and you're good to go. My 12-year-old daughter's like, yeah, good luck with that. So anyway, so it is a huge problem. If you look at all the different pieces with packaging, CDN, the players themselves after buffering content. So this example with the 30, 40 seconds is with 6-second segments. That's kind of the standard. It's not necessarily the golden amount of time. You could probably reduce that. 4 or 5 seconds is probably not a big deal, so there's some improvements there. But when you start reducing those segments down into the 1-2 seconds, you start actually having a lot of different issues with the CDN actually having problems getting everything in the right time, putting everything back together. So what are you going to do about it? So there's actually quite a few things that are out there today that are starting to make improvements on this latency. So you've got the Dash CMAV with low latency. It actually divides things into fragments, and then with HTTP 1.1, you have chunking, where you're actually breaking those segments into different pieces. So you're actually delivering pieces without waiting for that full 6 seconds. Players can actually put that back together. On the HLS side, you have low latency extensions as well. Basically similar in technology. It actually takes parts of those files to put those, to get those out there quicker. Then with HTTP 2, you're actually pushing content that's before it's even being asked for. So with that low latency, you're actually opening up the ports to be able to get that content quicker. So that's good. You're potentially wasting bandwidth, but you can actually improve on some of the low latency pieces. So if you do any of these solutions end to end, you actually have some pretty good improvements on latency, but you still have some reach. Not every player works the same. Not every thing works the same end to end. So you start getting on an individual case basis. Using unicast, you can actually have a pretty good solution here. But then you get into the next piece of here's kind of the timing of breaking these pieces up. But so you can actually start the client streaming quicker. But then you have the problem of scale. So if you think of how all the network providers do everything is done on the worst case scenario. When Verizon, AT&T, Comcast are out building a network, they're always planning on the worst case scenario. This example's Super Bowl, right? So basically, if you look at almost 100 million viewers watching broadcast for the Super Bowl and only 2.6 million streaming, so which all-time record, right? 2.6 million, that's a good start. But if you took all of that broadcast for the Super Bowl, and you said, I'm going to deliver all OTT, so I had one standard across the board. Now you're talking about building for peak, the bit rate needed for that broadcast quality so you can still view on your 75-inch TV versus your 6-inch screen or a tablet, something like that. So you got 3 times the amount of bandwidth. Now you're talking 35, 40 times the number of streams needed. The networks couldn't handle anywhere near that. So even though now you can fix the latency issues with some of the things that I was talking about, now you have an issue of being able to deliver in scale. Because you're going to end up with a scenario where you were years ago where instead of having an adaptive bit rate, you had a constant bit rate, you continue to buffer. Now with so many devices out there with unicast, never work. So what are you going to do about it? You're going to have a multicast solution. So now you have a multicast solution, so instead of one request coming back to one device, you can actually have one device delivering to multiple devices. You're like, oh, well, there you go. Problem solved. Now I have scale. Well, the problem goes back into the model I was talking about before. By actually having to do those multicast joins and pieces like that, you're actually adding more latency back into the network. So you kind of have a catch-22 on trying to make sure you're balancing all those different pieces so end-to-end you have an experience. I mean, because I think probably 90% of the people out here, if I was asked a question, when you're building this, you want one answer, one way to build this, so you don't have to build multiple ways to deliver your streaming content. Unfortunately, we're not quite there today. The next piece is, all right, so what are you going to do? Right now, I would say there's not an answer for everything end-to-end, but there's a lot of pieces that are actually starting to come together. So where you need scale, quality, latency, when all of those things matter, there's technologies like ALC that utilizes LCT. There are a bunch of acronyms. You can go look all these things up. That's asynchronous layered coding, utilizing layered coding transport. So there are some pieces like that. There were some kind of some prereqs on this. A lot of the wireless carriers were using MBMS, where they were actually using LTE to do a multicast delivery. There were some things back in 2014, 15. They tried to utilize this. Didn't really take off, but some of those models are out there. ATSC 3.0 has some pieces to actually deliver broadcast to multiple devices with a return path. So there are technologies that are coming. So this issue will continue to improve, but we're not quite there yet. There'll always be that piece on reach. So even though I start getting scale, even OTT where I'm streaming to devices, you're still going to need that 10-foot experience with a 75-inch screen. There will be devices out there reach-wise that you're still going to have multiple standards. So until everyone starts coming together, the dash with CMAP, that's a good start. But again, you got to have every device, every player, all those different things coming together to actually be able to make this work. So anyway, there's just kind of sum that up. So there are solutions out there. You're going to need multicast with ABR, low latency. For the masses, there'll still be pieces on the OTT where we're trying to build reach to make sure we're hitting all those devices. So that's kind of where I'm at, just kind of hopefully short and sweet. Maybe I have time for a couple questions. If not, I can answer some after.
I've got a microphone back here. If anybody's got a question, just raise your hand.
Perfect. I told you it was time for coffee.
All right, yeah, exactly. Well, thanks again, Adam. And I think these first two presentations give everyone a very good idea of exactly what Streaming Media West is all about. You've got the magic and you've got the tech that makes the magic happen. So whatever part of streaming media you're looking to learn more about, go forth, enjoy, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as I possibly can. Thanks again.